We're ending. All right, so I started.
All right, what do you need me, what am I here for? That's my question.
All right, so it's working good. All right, so this is you're gonna hold the camera just so like when I do
Close-ups and
like
things
a
like that?
Instagram live, yeah, just so that everyone has a good visual. Whenever it gets like a little like I know it's repetitive, maybe we could put it on the tripod, but I think holding it would be the best
Yeah,
option. So I'm gonna start off, I'm gonna go over theory, I'm gonna start off like the hellos and all that stuff, so you're off the hook for a little bit. And then-
oh, okay, I was like, oh, what do you mean off hook? Okay, I'm like, 'cause I'm not dressed.
And then once I'm ready to cut, I'll invite you to hold the phone.
This is exciting, so you sold almost 700 tickets?
703 tickets, I believe.
Jeez Louise. You can hear that? Are there people on there?
Like 30?
30 people?
60?
Okay, hi guys. Why didn't you tell me that when I walked in with my windshield wipers on?
Oh, no, they didn't hear
Oh.
that when I just started. All right, so we guys, I know it's 3 o'clock, but we're gonna give it a couple more minutes. Hairdresser time. And make sure everyone can join. Volume all the way up. All right. Can someone type something? Can we get a hello, guys?
How are you doing this through live?
Yeah. So you know what?
Oh, why don't I join?
You need the link.
Oh,
And I'm pretty sure it's not on sale
yeah.
anymore.
Right, okay.
And I don't know what's gonna happen if I minimize it. Should I message me?
Where? Yes, just now.
Oh, crap. I'm not sure what's your comment.
Here, minimize that.
That's weird because it says show live chat messages.
I don't see an option to say something.
Wait, do you have the YouTube app?
Mm-hmm.
What the hell is that? I'm gonna need kids. Can you copy the link and then open it in your app, not by double clicking it? So copy and then go onto your YouTube. What is this thing? I feel like I'm saying what opposed to. I'm not practicing safe distancing.
It's,
This action is turned off for content made for kids. Okay. All right, so apparently I made this content for kids and it won't let me, can you mute your sound? And it won't let me have you guys chat, which is pretty crappy. And I won't be able to edit it either. Show chat. How about now? Can you chat now? Or
How
no?
did you, do that?
Can you mute your sound? And it won't let me. Still no, but can hear you loud and clear. That's good. And then I went like this. Live chat.
Oh, right.
All right, guys, I am so sorry. There is no chatting during this class. So, what I'm going to have you guys do is I'm going to have you guys friend request Elise on Instagram. Elise is here to help me. And then you guys can ask questions through there. So it's Elise underscore, right? Tutorial?
Yep.
No, Elise underscore Serenity.
Yeah.
All right, so, hi guys. Okay. Let's move this back a little bit. Can we hold up the battery?
Will they do it through messages? Okay.
Okay, so, where are we at? The number of people?
173.
All right, so I think we could start. Can you guys, I hope you guys can see, it says show chat. But I think it's because of the content, because I
Right.
put it for kids, which is kind of crazy. Okay. So we're gonna start. First and foremost, I'm gonna sit down, since we're gonna be chatting for a little bit. So thank you guys all for joining and for signing up. I'm really excited how far this can travel. I know everyone's having a hard time, and I know everyone's kind of stressing out, but it all is gonna come to an end, and we are going to go back to work. So let's use this time wisely. Let's learn, let's regroup, let's sort of, start fresh when we do come back. Since there is no chatting, I did write Elise's Instagram name on here, so it's Elise underscore Serenity. Elise has her phone on her, so anytime you send her a message, she will be able to read that question out loud, and this way, if something is confusing, she could read it to me, and I'll be able to answer. Also, I will be home all day tomorrow and day after and after, so if any questions do pop up, please message me on Instagram and I will answer any question. Just try to be specific about which part of the haircut, just so that I know what you guys are talking about. All right, so thank you, a humongous thank you for anyone who donated. I so appreciate it. As I mentioned it on Instagram, it is being distributed between all of the staff members in the salon, which I have some young girls in here that, this is their only job. So when they're sitting home, they're not making any money. So this will really help them out. And I have a couple of girls that are on their own as well, so they have lots of bills to pay. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. As far as today's class, today we are going to be going over a long hair styling or long hair cutting. I will be doing a demonstration of a face frame with a middle part and the side part. I know every time I teach classes, it is always a middle part to make it a little bit easier, but I know side part is more of a popular option for clients, and it is always a much more of a difficult approach. So I'll make sure to go over that. As well as doing a face frame, we are going to do 2 different layering techniques. There won't be any blow drying, so this way I can get a lot of hair cutting in. Elise is laughing at me because she's standing right behind the
I know.
So 2 different layering techniques, and I'll be able to explain when to choose one over the other, so that so you guys can customize it to your client's needs. Before we start, and before we go into the cutting portion, we have to go over a little bit of the theory. So every class that I teach, I always go over the theory, because the words that I say have to make sense to you guys. I tried to keep it as generic as possible, so it is easy to follow along, but I know a couple of words are going to slip out, so I wanna make sure that you guys are understanding everything that I am saying. All right, so this is the theory that is very similar to any theory that you might have learned from school, from whatever education that you have that's coming in the salon, or any classes that you've taken. There are certain wordage that is going to be a little bit different, and I will explain why I use those words. All right, so the first thing that we're gonna go over is the elevation and over direction. So elevation is the amount of lift that we are putting onto the hair when we are cutting your haircut. So the amount of lift, the higher you elevate the hair, the more movement you normally will create. So the heavier you want the haircut to be, generally speaking, you want to create less lift. So you don't want to elevate the hair nearly as high as the haircut, where you want lots of movement and lots of texture. Do you need to shut off
So the fan, someone can hear the fan. The
Okay.
visual quality is a little blurry, but it's okay. And then if we can move the camera a little closer to the poster.
Yes, absolutely, we can do all that. So Elise will shut off the heating system so you guys can hear a little bit better. And then she's gonna move the camera a little bit closer. Hopefully the quality will be a little better once she holds the phone a little closer to the outlet. All right, so again, elevation is the amount of lift that we are creating in the hair. So lift is going to be our key word. Whenever we are talking about over direction, we are talking about how far we are moving hair away from where it grows on the head. So generally speaking, if you move hair away from the face and you're starting by the face, you are going to preserve that length. If you are starting in the back and you move hair towards the face, you're going to preserve hair towards the area that you are over directing to. So again, to explain in very simple words, right, because you always want to think about hair instead of just generally speaking. Anytime you're going to move hair away from where it grows, where you're moving it to is where it's going to be longer, yeah? All right, so over direction is moving hair. All right, so the next three things that we're gonna go over is our techniques. So we have line technique, layers, and graduation. Those are the three techniques to cutting hair, and they are depending on how much movement or how much heaviness you want to see in the haircut. Whenever we are talking about line technique has no movement and is the heaviest haircut that we possibly can do on the client. So without the use of elevation and without the use of over direction, if we cut hair as natural to a natural fall and where the gravity brings the hair, that's going to be the line technique. So normally, if you comb the hair directly down at a natural fall and cut to the same line, you are going to create a line technique, also called one length. The next technique that we're going to go over is layers. Layers is usually the removal of weight, which means we are going to create lots of movement, lots of texture, lots of flippiness that's going to happen in the haircut. Again, you're going to have to use some sort of elevation because you have to lift hair, because if you don't lift hair, you're going to do a line technique. So some sort of elevation is going to have to be created, and most likely some over direction as well. And then the last technique that we're going to go over is going to be graduation. Graduation is the opposite of layers. It is a buildup of weight where the length on the outside is going to be shorter and it's gradually going to get longer the higher up the head that you go. So again, you have to use elevation to create graduation, because if you don't use elevation, you're going to create line technique. So you always have to use elevation, and over direction will depend on what shape of the graduation you are creating. So these are the two key factors, and you're going to have to decide, depending on technique and depending on shape, which key factors you're going to use. The next three things that we're going to discuss is your shape. Your shape is the shape of the haircut that we're trying to create. So whenever we are talking about hair that has lots of movement, and the length in the front is the same length as it is in the back, it's got lots of flippy layers in the front and lots of shorter layers in the back, we're gonna call that shape round. Round is going to be the shape that follows all the way through and leaves the same length in the front as it is in the back. So we're gonna call it a fluid shape. The next shape that we're going to discuss is going to be triangular. We're gonna skip the square. So triangular shape is going to be whenever your cutting line, so the line that you are cutting is going to be from short to long. So it doesn't matter if it's short in the front, long in the back, short on the top, long on the bottom, short on the bottom, long on the top. As long as the line that you are creating is short to long, we are going to call it triangular. So short to long. I feel like I forgot how to write. It's been a while. Okay, and the last shape that we're going to discuss is going to be our square shape. So a square shape is the most controversial shape because depending on who you talk to about hair, someone's going to describe it differently. So a square shape is when your side, your top, and your back is going to be exactly the same length. To achieve that is not an easy haircut. You have to be able to create your shortest part of your side the exactly same length as the shortest side of the back. Now that you have some head inconsistencies that you have to pay attention to, and your cowlicks and your hair growth patterns and all of that stuff together, it is one of the most difficult shapes to create. So instead of worrying about creating the perfect square shape, anytime I'm going to be talking about square, I'm going to be talking about the cutting line that I'm creating. If I'm holding my fingers parallel to me, or parallel to me this way, or parallel to the ceiling this way, I'm going to call it a square cutting line. So anytime my fingers are parallel to walls, floor, or ceiling, that's going to be a square cutting line. Okay, so I hope this makes sense to you guys. I know I went by really fast with this information. Again, please reach out to me if you want to go over any of this information separately after this class. And this is just a quick refresher to make sure that if I do say any of these words while I'm cutting hair, it is sort of making sense to you a little bit more. All right, so before we move on, I'm going to ask Elise if there are any questions before we can continue to our wonderful model for our haircut. We're all good?
Is there any way to project more volume? This is from Simply C.
More volume. Well, the phone is going to be a little bit closer to me, so I'm going to say that it will be a little bit louder in a couple minutes when Elise is standing a little bit closer.
Totally was thinking about volume of hair.
All right, so we're going to move on right to the opposite side of the salon.
Okay. Take this with me.
And here's a wonderful model. Her name is Kate. Kate, thank you so much for being here and practicing safe distancing. Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Social
distancing. Okay, so you're going to come a little bit closer. We're going to talk about sectioning hair, and we're going to talk about how we're using the comb and the clips to help us. And then
That's what it looks like.
and then we can start.
Right here.
All right, guys, so this is a wonderful model, Kate. Kate is from Pivot Point. Pivot Point, that's the name of a city. Pivot Point is offering 25% of everything that is available on their website. So if you want to take advantage of that, grab yourself a doll head. You could always re-watch this video after, and you could pause it, and then you could cut the same haircut as I'm doing. I will also be doing more classes, so I'm planning on doing another class on Friday, and it will be with shorter length, and then another one sometime next week. I haven't figured out what's a best day with my busy schedule at home, to do a shorter length haircut. All right, so whenever we are working on lines, we always want to make sure that the amount of water, the amount of moisture that we have in the hair is the same from the beginning of the haircut to the end of the haircut. Right, so a first technique that we're going to be doing is going to be a face frame. Face frame is what I usually start most of my layered looks. So a face frame is layers that are falling around the front hairline. Elise, can you take a look to make sure that I'm in the center?
You are.
Wonderful.
It's your,
All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna section off a diagonal section following the front hairline. I'm gonna comb the hair towards the direction how I want my section to go. Once I'm ready, I'm gonna place the front of the comb right against the scalp and slide the comb all the way past the hairline so that I can make sure that my section is really clean. I'm gonna do the same thing on the opposite side. And what I'm watching out for is the amount of hair and the density that I have within my section. So the width of the section should always be thick enough so that I could see through the section and I'd be able to see her skin, but I want to make sure that there are no gappage in the recession line. So I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Comb the hair towards the direction how I want my section to go. Place the front of the comb right against the scalp and slide the comb all the way past the hairline. Separate, move this hair back, and then comb the rest down. I'm going to clip this out of the way to make sure that I see my sectioning really clean. All right, so the next step I'm going to do.
I have a question.
Yes. No question.
I just saw it come up. Thank you. Can we move the camera closer to the mannequin? It's a little hard to see the details.
Yes, so what we're going to do is I'm going to have you hold it.
Sure. And then, is it possible to change the position so
The what?
down?
All right, so at least come hold it right here.
Yep. And then actual questions here. Please repeat elevation when you have a chance. And what causes front to be long and what keeps back to be long? Do you always section face from?
All right, so I will go over elevation and I will go over the over direction, which is what keeps the front longer than the back. So elevation is the lift that we are creating in the hair. So the higher I elevate, the more movement I'm going to create in this section. So if we pay attention and we look really close to what's happening with the hair right in here in this section, if I don't elevate that hair, do you guys see how this whole entire section, from all the way from her forehead all the way to an inch in, everything is flat. Now, if I take this section and I lift it, do you guys see how much movement and how much shorter this hair would have been if this is taut, right? So the higher you lift, the more of this hair you're going to end up cutting, which means the more movement you're going to create in the haircut. So that is our elevation. So the first step is to establish middle part if your client has a middle part, section off front hairline, Make sure that the density of the hair is equal on both sides. My second step is going to be creating a cutting line that's going to go from short to long to create a face frame exactly how I want to see it. So we have existing length, which is going to be right here. I already pre-cut her to a perfect line technique. And then I'm going to go from this point to shorter to wherever she wants to see it. So she said, I want to be able to push my hair behind the ear, which means it needs to be somewhat an inch to 2 inches below the chin, but I want to be able to see the emphasis around the face. I want to make sure that I have the movement, and if I'm curling the hair, I want to make sure that that curl is staying in the hair and it's not getting weighed down by the weight of the hair. So always working at our eyesight. So what I'm gonna have Elise do is I'm gonna have you stand back just a little bit so that we can see my body position. So I'm gonna work at the eyesight, which means I'm gonna lunge down just a little bit, and when I'm working, I'm always going to be constantly either coming up, coming down, moving a little to the right, or a little bit to the left. If we're standing here and we're uncomfortable working, we're gonna either overdirect the hair too much or we're gonna elevate it too little. Right? So we always want to work in front of our section, and we always want to be at the eyesight. So if I'm gonna be cutting here and I'm standing all the way on top, I won't be able to see what I'm doing. I always want to be somewhere around here. All right, Elise, come on back. Not too close, 6 feet, please. I'm just kidding. Don't breathe on me.
Funny, not so funny.
All right, so the first step, I'm going to establish my shortest piece. My shortest piece is going to be just about 2 inches below her chin. Once I lift that hair, I want to hold it to where that shortest piece is going to be. I want to hold it right at my guide. I'm going to lift it. I'm going to comb the hair towards my fingers. Once I place the comb and the fingers together, now I'm going to move my knuckle so the knuckle is pointing directly towards the overall length, right? So my elevation is just off of the skin. My over direction is directly forward from where the hair grows in the middle. And my knuckle is pointing all the way towards where the existing length is going to be. So this is going to be my angle, just like that. So I'm going to recomb this, place the comb in, place my fingers on top of the comb, slide down to my existing or to my guide, where it's going to be 2 inches below the chin, place my knuckle pointing towards the overall length, and now I'm safe to cut. I'm going to cut just a little bit at a time. I'd rather take 5 or 6 snips, but make sure this line looks really clean, than rushing through it and then making a mistake. So the next step is I need to move a little bit to the left, because my over direction needs now to be directly forward from where this part of the hair grows. So instead of bringing that hair all the way to the middle, I'm going to bring it directly forward from where it grows. Same rules apply. Place the comb in. Fingers go above the comb. And I'm going to extend the line that I just created.
I have a question about hairlines. If someone has a widow's peak, would you approach this sectioning or face frame in a different way?
Good question. So the question is, if someone has a widow's peak, I would be cautious of how thick your section is in the front. And most likely, when you work of elevation that's going to happen because of more hair in that area, you would just have to point cut into it after you finish that haircut. That would be what I would do. Hope that helps. Okay, so here's my line. I'm going to repeat it, guys, because this is the most important part of the haircut. I'm going to elevate the hair just off of the face. My comb goes in, my fingers go in front of the comb. I'm gonna slide to where I think my guide it needs to be. Where am I existing, or where I'm gonna put the existing length. Knuckles are pointing towards the overall length. Over direct this hair directly from where it grows. Extend the line, and then continue. Squat down a little bit lower or lunge down, and then right into the length. Now, this is, so my hand position, my elevation, my over direction, and my cutting line is only valid for this particular scenario. Now, I'm gonna have Elise come stand right behind me, or right next to me. So if this length in here is gonna need to be shorter, do you guys see how much more drastic that line is now? If this is shorter, the triangular cutting line that I created is gonna have to be much more severe. What I'm gonna have to do instead is, instead of holding my fingers here, I would have to hold them this way. Now, if her overall length is longer, it will be the same concept applies. So wherever you are bringing your elevation and over direction is going to stay about the same for every haircut. Your finger angle will be dictated by how short and how long your overall length is. The steeper this cutting line needs to be, the more exaggerated your fingers need to be. Now, if someone comes in and they have hair all the way down here and they want a very short face frame, you're gonna have to over direct to the opposite side, because that would be the only way that you're going to be able to create this extreme line. Now, anytime you're gonna over direct away from directly forward, don't expect to see a really clean cutting line. You are going to have some inconsistencies, and that's okay. All right, so now I have my guide coming from the opposite side, and I'm going to do my right side. So I took a little piece. I'm going to make sure that I don't actually cut that piece of hair, right? Because that is the established length coming from my left side. I need to use it for my right side. So I'm going to drop my doll head down just a little bit so that I can be comfortable. And then Lisa's going to go a little tiny bit to my right. Now my elevation is going to stay the same. Elevation is just a little bit off of the face. Now, why is elevation just a little bit off of the face? Why can't I cut it all the way up here? I can. But the lower elevation, the more precise your line is going to be, which is a great option to have if someone has really straight, really thick hair, and they don't really want that Rachel haircut from Friends from 90s. You don't want to cut at a low elevation. That's because it's going to create a really defined cutting line. If you want to create more softness, you're going to lift hair slightly higher, and by the time it drops, it will be much softer. All right, so I have a little bit of the guide coming from the opposite side. I'm going to use that as a reference point. Because it's a middle part, this is going to be a symmetric haircut. All right, so I'm going to hold it. I'm going to find my guide. Once I found it, I'm going to point my fingers towards the overall length. But you guys see how my fingers are literally pointing right to my thumb. Now, if I point them too low, I'm going to leave too much of this length in here. If I point them too high, it's going to be way worse. You're going to be cutting a huge major hole right in here. So at the beginning, if you know your challenge is cutting your face frame, and you always happen to cut your right side or your left side a little bit shorter, just go past your guide a little tiny bit. Once you pass your guide, you could always go back and trim it up. Once you cut it too short, now you just gonna have to tell a client to go home and come back in a month.
And you also, did you do the one length trim first and then the face frame, or do you ever start with the face frame first?
Good question. So for today, I pre-cut her overall length just because she was a little straggly and I want her to look good for you guys. But my overall length is not necessarily is a must first. I do that depending on the density and the texture of my client's hair. So if someone has really thick hair, doing a line technique first is going to emphasize the thickness of it. If I want the overall length to be a little bit softer, I'm going to do their line technique after. Also, if someone wants bare layer trim, I'm not going to waste my time doing a line technique. I'm going to do the layers and then just trim up the bottom after I finish the blowout. All right, so let's
2 more questions for you.
let me
Sure. When you're
recap this side, and then I'd love to hear the questions. All right, so lift just a little bit off of the face. Elevation, over direction directly forward from where the hair grows. Slide to see your guide from coming from the opposite side. Here's my line. I'm going to move over just a little tiny bit to the right to make sure that my over direction, this hair gets brought directly forward and not towards the middle, and definitely not towards the side. Towards the middle, you're going to preserve too much length. Towards the side, you're going to cut too much hair off. So I'm going to bring this directly forward. Make sure that my finger angle mimics this cutting line that I already created. And then all the way until the end. Okay, so Lisa, I'd love to hear the questions.
Can you explain we're using a lot of tension or no? So how you use tension in cutting the face frame?
Yes, so tension is, so I find tension is probably the least important part of haircutting. The more tension that you're going to create, right? If I pull a lot, I'm going to be pulling the skin off of the skull, right? So when I release it, it's going to be a little bit more jagged. But also at the same time, if I barely have any tension, it is also going to be pretty soft. So I always keep my tension somewhere in the middle. I want to make sure that the section is really clean, nothing's buckling, and I'm not also really tightening that hair so that it makes it very uncomfortable for the client.
And wide teeth or fine teeth?
Fine teeth, for this particular haircut, because her hair texture is on the finer side, if someone has curly hair and they want it to be much softer, I am going to switch to the wide tooth. Wide tooth is usually a little bit harder to see your clean guides, because look at the gappage that we're creating in the hair. And the more gaps you have, the more over direction you're creating, which means the less precise your line is going to be. And in some instances, that is the thing that you want to do. All right, so that is my face frame for the middle part. So the next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to resection her to go to a side part, because I find that we can figure out how to do layers and we can figure out how to do a face frame. But the minute a client comes in with a side part, we always feel like there is not enough hair on one side and way too much on the opposite side. So I'm going to comb the hair towards the center of the head. Wherever her natural part is, that's where she's going to separate. Make sure all of that hair is good. Once I do that, all I have to do is just push the hair forward, and that hair is going to separate for me. So this is where her part is. I want to make sure that it's not too heavy. Let's go right here. She looks like, I think that's good. So even if a client says, but I don't wear my hair like this, I wear my hair from here all the way to down here. You want your section to be diagonal all the way to the top of the head. The reason for it is, even though you're going to have inconsistent haircut, right? It's going to be unbalanced. By the time you get to the back, it has to be balanced. So if you have a section that's going to be right from the side all the way down here, that means there's no way that you could cut this side and make it look even. So if you do a diagonal section right to the center, I know that whatever sections that I do, these guides have to combine together and they have to match. All right, so here is my sectioning. Make sure it's nice and clean. I'm going to section off the front hairline, same exact way as how I've done before. Place the front of the comb right against the scalp. follow the front hairline, comb this hair forward, and then comb the rest back. So I know you guys know that I'm a precision hairdresser, and I'm always working clean. Not just when I do the videos for Instagram. That is my reality. This is how I work every day. The cleaner the section that you are working with, the cleaner your overall look is going to be. If anyone has ever asked me, why can't I get a clean cutting line? It is always going to be because your sections are not clean and you're not sure where to bring that hair out. If you comb the hair directly from the scalp and you bring it to the elevation and over direction that you need it to be, and you use sharp scissors, it is impossible not to create a sharp cutting line. So hopefully that helps, and hopefully that will motivate you guys to keep your sections really neat. All right, so here's my side part. So my sections are a little tiny bit off, and I have some random hairs that are coming on top of the previous guide, but that's okay. I'm gonna section her. I always do the heavy side first. Want to make sure that the side that needs to be shorter is done first, because the side that needs to be longer is done first, because the other side I could take shorter a little bit at a time. I'm going to spray a little bit of water to make sure that she's not drying out, and I can get really nice clean sectioning. This is also how I spray all my clients, directly right in their faces. We call it a facial, Serenity facial. All right, I'm gonna comb that out of the way. I'm gonna comb this down, and all of the same rules apply, right? So elevation, just off of the skin. Over direction, directly where the hair grows from, and finger angle from the shortest piece to the longest piece. So I'm going to have you move back and a little tiny bit to your left. Okay. So if this was a middle part, right, this would have been my over direction, directly forward, finger angle, elevation. Do you guys see how right over here I have a little bit more length? Because that is the hair, this is the middle part, and that is the hair that's coming from the opposite side. So I'm going to take this shorter and pretend that I never cut this, right? So this way it becomes a true visual for you guys. All right, so I'm going to bring this hair forward from where that hair grows from. I'm going to elevate just a little bit off of the face. I'm going to hold my fingers. I'm going to cut just a little bit, just so that she doesn't go too short. And I'm going to find my longest piece, and my knuckle is going to be pointing right to the overall length. So once I'm ready, instead of cutting here, I'm going to move my hand tiny bit to the left. So that's going to create just a little bit of over direction, and it's going to preserve a little tiny bit of this length. Right, so I need this side to be longer than this side, and that is going to give me a little tiny bit of a security blanket. So if this is directly forward from where it grows, all I have to do is just move it a tiny bit to the left. So that's going to be my cutting angle. The rest is exactly the same thing as what I've been doing, except my cutting line is just a little tiny bit more severe because I'm recutting that hair to go shorter. I have a little tickle in my throat, and I'm so afraid to cough, but I don't want you guys to think that I'm sick.
Do you always, are your partings parallel to your hairline?
The parting is always going to be mimicking the front hairline. Yes, that is correct. And the main reason for it is you always want to make sure that you have the same amount of density here as you do right on the side. All right, so now that my left side, my heaviest side is done, all of the hair looking good, I'm gonna place this so that I can visually see where that hair is going to live when I blow dry her hair, right? So she's gonna be wearing it like this, and it's gonna fall just below her chin, which means on my leaner side, my shortest piece needs to be just below the chin. So isn't that crazy? I only cut half an inch, not even, off of this side, and look how much hair I'm gonna have to recut on my leaner side. The reason for it is this hair has longer distance to travel to get to just below the chin than this hair here. So if it has less distance to travel, that hair needs to be shorter because the distance is much closer together. So if our lengths are exactly the same and you move the side part, or you move the part to the side, but you cut it into the middle, you're going to have one side, the side that's heavier and has more hair, is going to be shorter, and the opposite side is going to be longer. So it's very important to always ask your client, where do you wear your natural part? If they switch from side to side, you can cut it in the middle. If they always wear it on the left side, then cut it on the left side. Always make sure that you go with slightly longer than where you think the shortest side needs to be, and then cross-check it, and then cross-check it again, and then you can continue with your haircut. All right, so I'm going to have you stand back and just come a little to the right. Again, I'm going to check to make sure that I could see exactly where that length is going to fall. All right, so just below the chin. So it's going to be right over here. I'm going to pick up that hair. Now this side is going to be much, much more severe. So I want to make sure that my finger angle is way more exaggerated. Where it used to be here, right? So it used to be here. Here's my cutting line. Now I'm going to be all the way up here. Elevate just off of the face. This is going to be my shortest piece. I'm going to over direct directly forward from where that hair grows from. And then exaggerate my fingers to point towards the overall length. So I'm going to recomb this, really make sure that I'm working with clean sections. And then all the way to the bottom. So again, I'm going to go a little bit at a time. Want to make sure that I don't take this side too short. Over direct directly forward from where the hair grows. Here is my cutting line. And then all the way into the existing length. So while I'm cutting this, I'm changing my elevation slightly. If I'm up here, the elevation is going to get lower and lower. I always want to stay about the same distance away from the skin. So if I'm about my fist full or fist length width away from the face, I'm going to do the same thing away from the shoulders or away from the neck.
I like that.
That was a good one.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think I've ever used that one before. All right, so I'm going to grab the front pieces, not too much tension, and I'm literally just going to place where that hair is going to rest when it's blown out. Do you guys see how the balance is pretty even? But now if I lift this, or if I bring these two pieces together, right? This should be bringing them in the middle. They're a little bit off, right? So do you guys see how the middle, the middle is a little bit off? Actually, you can't see that on that angle. So the lengths these lengths are a little bit off. So this side is shorter and this side is longer. Too close. Too close.
COVID-19 alert.
You're definitely a little too close to me. Okay, so here's my guide. Now, if someone's sectioning or someone's parting is even closer, then I'm gonna make sure that this side is even longer and more exaggerated, and this side will stay shorter. All right, so now I have my face frame. So the next step is to figure out how much movement do I want to see in my haircut. So the first haircut that I'm going to do is going to be, front is going to be shorter, and by the time I get to all the way in the back, the length in the back is going to be long enough where she doesn't have to really worry about blow drying her hair. As long as she blow dries hair that's in the front and on top of the head, the rest of the hair is going to look great. This is an ideal haircut for anyone who has thick hair, not good at blow drying, or someone who has never had layers and wanted to just sort of soften their way into this haircut. Right, so here's my guide. The next step is I'm going to take a really fine section that's going to be mirroring the section that I just had. So wide side of the comb, section parallel to the previous. I'm going to move that hair out of the way and then clip it. Move that hair forward. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Comb that hair out of the way. Clip it. And then comb that forward. All right, so heavy side first, just because it's more comfortable for me. I do the hardest side first, or I do the easier side first to make sure that it's nice and easy, and then that gives me the guide for the rest of the haircut and what I'm going to do from the step. So once you establish your face frame and you establish your first guide, the rest is kind of easy. If you want least amount of movement, you're going to elevate your hair or elevate each section at exactly same spot as how you cut it. If you want a little bit more movement, you're going to raise it up a little bit higher, and with each section, you're going to go a tiny bit higher. But again, this is still going to give you really soft layers that by the time they get to the back, the rest is going to be solid. So it's going to be a really easy haircut for a client to blow dry. So we're going to do with second option. I'm going to move my section slightly higher with each section. So if I started off here, my next elevation, my next section is going to be elevated a little tiny bit higher. So I'm going to gather all of the hair between my fingers, lift it to the elevation where I want it to be, over direction, directly forward from where the hair grows from, and then just move it a little tiny bit to the left. My fingers and my comb are working together, flat against each other, to make sure that my section is clean, the tension is even, and my cutting line is precise. Comb goes all the way to my fingers. Fingers go the back of the comb. Slide my fingers towards the ends of the hair. Lower myself a little tiny bit, and then go all the way, following the guide that I created previously. I'm going to move that out of the way. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Elevation, if this was my first section, I'm going to elevate a little bit higher, over direction directly forward from where the hair grows from. Fingers go behind the comb. Follow the cutting line. Always make sure that your fingers are mirroring what the cutting line is doing. Always make sure that the guide that you're seeing and your fingers are working together, not against each other. and then all the way until I run out of hair. So what helps me by keeping my elevation consistent is I remember where I'm holding my fingers, right? I remember the angle that I'm holding my hand, where I'm holding my hand, how it feels, my whole entire body, right? How it feels when I'm holding it. If I know my next section needs to be elevated higher, what I could do is I could lower the chair so the movement, how I'm holding, is going to be exactly the same. But since the chair is lower, it will be the same thing as if I was working higher. Right? So next section, my sectioning is going to mirror the previous. I'm going to clip that out of the way. So if my section was diagonal here, next one was here, next one is here. Always diagonal until I get to the back of the head. Same thing on the opposite side. I'm going to comb and clip that out of the way. Comb that hair forward. Right, so the leaner side, I'm going to move out of the way. Heavier side, I'm going to comb that hair directly forward, move it a little tiny bit to the side, and lift a little bit higher. So with each section, I'm elevating the hair just a little bit higher to make sure that I'm not creating much more of exaggerated length from short to long, from front to the back. So the higher I elevate, the more movement I'm going to create. So if I want just a little bit of movement, I could keep my elevation exactly the same for the whole entire haircut. If I want a little bit more movement, I'm going to lift my sections only a little bit. If I want a lot of movement, I'm going to move with my sections much more. And then all the way until I run out of hair to cut. Once you get to the bottom of the section, your elevation is going to stay about the same throughout each individual section. The reason for it is we don't want to create much movement in here. If you create too much movement, it's going to be too skinny because really there's not much length that's left all the way on the bottom. Move that hair out of the way. I'm going to drop the tripod just a little bit.
There's a question.
Yes.
Any tips in cutting these layers face framing on someone who has a large recession area and high density on the top bang front of the hairline?
So the rules are still going to be exactly the same. If someone has really thick hair, be careful with how much movement you create. Do they want to blow dry their thick hair, or do they want it to make it easier? If you want to make it easier for them, then you might want to do just more of a lower elevation layers. If someone has a recession that is very visible, right? So recession, this area in here, this goes all the way back. Most likely this face frame area is going to be really weak. So if it's already weak, don't create any elevation. Cut something that's going to be a little bit more on the heavier side, because that's going to give them the feel like they have thicker hair. Another tip, what I usually do is if there's someone has, really thick hair here, really thick hair down here, but this area is kind of on the finer hair, on the finer side, or they have a lot of baby hairs, what I usually do is I'll point cut into this area and into this area once I'm done with the haircut and leave this blunt. So I'm almost fixing the inconsistency within the hair. All right, so hopefully that answers your question. Now I have 3 sections that I did. I'm going to now cross-check to make sure that my elevation is staying fluid. So if I took a section that was diagonal going from front to the back, I'm going to take a now diagonal section that's going to go the opposite direction. So if I take a diagonal section going this way, I'm gonna hold section 1, section 2, and section 3 all at the same time in my fingers. And if I bring it out to the same elevation where I cut it, which was about here, I should see a fluid line that gradually is getting longer, shorter to longer. Actually, what I want you to do, Elisa, is I want you to stand right next to me and then not zoom out, but move back, so that you can see how this length here is shorter and it's gradually getting longer. Now, if my elevation was lower, right? So if my elevation was all the way down here, do you guys see how that length now, or this length here, is shorter? This length would have met and reached all of this, right? So if I elevate higher, which is going to be the next haircut that we do, I'll be cutting all that hair off, right? So this proves the higher you elevate with each section, the more movement you're going to create within your haircut. You always want to cross-check about every 3 sections, especially if you are starting out. Cross-checking keeps you in check. Cross-checking makes sure that what you're doing is proper and it's working for the haircut. It also cross-checking your balance of the haircut to make sure that the balance is even, right? So the only way that I could cross-check for balance is if I take the shortest piece on both sides, come on over, hold the end, and then just watch it where it's falling at a natural fall, right? So if I hold the shortest pieces and I bring it to where they're going to fall, once she's done blow drying her hair, the balance has to be right, right? So here, we couldn't put tension on that hair because she's not going to be wearing her hair in her face. We almost needed to pretend where it's going to be. This area doesn't need to be pretended. It's just going to fall wherever we bring it to. All right, so my next section is going to be, since the density of her hair is a little on the finer side, my next section is going to be right from the center all the way right to her nape. And that's going to be my last section for this haircut. I'm going to comb this away from the middle, keep it nice and clean, and then I can go right back, standing in the front. So again, I'm going to do the heavy side first.
And this haircut, is this good for all hair types? Does it matter if you have thin hair or?
This is, I find that any classic haircut works for any hair texture. Always take in consideration, we'll go just a little bit. Always take in consideration the extreme versions. Someone who has really, really fine hair, really, really thick hair, really, really curly, kinky hair, and be just a little bit more safer, a little bit more cautious. Other than that, this haircut will work for anyone. This is your bread and butter haircut on long layers. This is what I do at least once a day, as long as I have a couple of long hair clients. All right, so I'm combing all of the hair directly forward, all the way towards my fingers, and over direction is directly forward from where that hair grows from. One more time. Place my fingers in front of the comb, on the back of the comb, all the way until I find my guide, and then all the way down. I'm going to move over just a little towards the left, over direction directly forward from where that hair grows from. And then whatever is reaching my fingers is what I'm going to cut. Lower myself just a little bit. I'm going to cross check to to make sure no hair is reaching. Now, most of the time, doesn't matter how long someone's hair is, by the time you get to the last couple of sections, there won't be much movement over here. None of this hair is going to reach all the way here, so don't worry about finding something to cut. If there is a guide and there's no hair that's reaching, leave it be. You're done. So try not to look for things to find. All right, and then the opposite side. This is my last section on the leaner side. At least I want you to kind of come right from the back of the doll head. And look how I'm combing. I'm combing this directly forward, all the way towards me. So really clean sections, all of that hair, the shortest distance from the back of the head, all the way to my fingers. Come on over, Elise. Directly forward. Find your guide. Make sure it's really clean and visible. My elevation is slightly higher with each section. Until I run out of hair to cut. All right, so this is our face frame with side part and just enough movement that she feels fancy and sexy. She can do a beach wave, she can blow dry it straight, she can wear it natural, she's got some curl pattern in her hair. But since our elevation was quite low and over direction was forward, by the time you get to the back, all of these layers are the same pretty much length and overall length, right? So we have shorter layers in here, and they're gradually getting longer and longer and longer until the back is pretty much solid.
Nice.
All right, so the next haircut is going to be much more movement, but still creating more movement in the front than you do in the back. So, and I'm going to use the same sectioning as I already have, so same side part and the same face frame. So we're going to take a minute break while I wet her down. And then Elise, if you want to check, make sure that you have all of the questions covered.
Yeah.
We're all good? Wonderful.
Let's see.
Elise, this is exciting. Instagram's been very active today.
Yeah, this is like, especially now, there's no beautiful balayages to post. Found a.
Always a repost, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's get right on to the second haircut. Okay, so with second haircut, if we are using the same guide coming from our front face frame, but we are creating more movement, so my elevation is going to be higher. I'm not cutting any of the overall length, and won't be cutting anything that goes around the front hairline. but I'm going to be cutting more and more hair the farther back I go. So the longer the hair in the back in comparison to the front, and the higher you elevate, the more movement you're going to create in your haircut. So I'm gonna move this out of the way. Again, I'm gonna do the longer side first, so the heavier side. And this is where you guys are gonna see my over direction really well. All right, so first haircut, my elevation was down here. Right now, I'm gonna elevate all the way up here. If this is my over direction, and bring directly forward, I'm gonna make sure that I can see her face, directly forward, I'm gonna over direct just a little tiny bit away from the center, because this is the leaner, the heavier side. It's got more hair on the side needs to be longer. So I'm gonna move this away just a little bit, and then my finger angle is going to match to the guide that I see underneath. Right, so I want to make sure that I find that guide. Now I'm going to follow it all the way through.
And you always do this from behind the client?
Whenever my elevation is higher than what the first haircut, then yes, because this would be really awkward to stand in the front and lift hair that high up. So again, over direction, directly forward from where that hair grows from. Find your guide. Here it is. Match your fingers to your guide, and then go ahead and cut. Now, I know there won't be any hair to cut here because none of this hair is going to reach, but I'm still going to check to make sure. So I'm going to bring that hair directly forward, slightly lower elevation. I'm still going to cross-check to make sure. Comb that hair out of the way. Move it nice and clean. Now I have the opposite side. So now this is the leaner side. This is the more extreme side. So if I know my cutting line, right? So how I cut this section from top to the bottom was triangular, because this length here is shorter and it's cut to be longer on the bottom. That means my fingers need to be triangular. That means I can't hold it parallel to the wall or to me. I can't hold it following the head shape. I have to hold it so the hair that I'm leaving on the hair, on the head, the hair that I'm leaving on the head is going to be from short to long. So here's my elevation. My over direction is going to be directly forward from where it grows. Now I know my knuckle is got to be pretty far away from the head shape in comparison to my fingers. Here's my guide. Hold it nice and tight. Not too tight because you don't want to create too much stress from the scalp. Move over just a little bit. Directly forward from where it grows. Drop the elevation a little tiny bit. Make sure that on this side, my knuckles are farther away, right? Triangular, short to long. And on this side, my fingertips are going to be slightly farther away and knuckles closer, right? So my next section is going to be exactly the same as what I did in the previous haircut. So sections are staying the same. Over direction is staying the same. The only thing that's going to change is my elevation. So I'm bringing hair higher, which means I'm going to create more movement. And I'm standing now in the back of the client. So if it helps you concentrate better and you want to work one side at a time, I think that works really well. If you feel like you are nervous that you're going to cut the second side too short, you could always go from side to side, how I did in the first haircut. So again, I'm going to lift a tiny bit higher. Get ready to move my fingers farther away from the head than my knuckles. Find my guide. Here it is. Get my fingers to match to my guide. And then cut a clean cutting line. Now a little tip, don't move your fingers. Hold the fingers exactly where it is. Comb the hair towards the elevation and over direction where you want to hold it. Drop, move the fingers, hold the hair, recomb it again, and now you know what the elevation over direction is. All you have to do is slide out, find your guide, and cut right to it.
So just to recap, on this side, your fingertips are pointed further out to reserve the shape and length of the triangular face frame?
Yes, yep, and so my fingertips, whatever my hand position was when I was working here, it will be the opposite working here. So if my fingertips were up and knuckles were creating length that were longer on the outside, when I'm standing back here, the distance that my fingertips need to be would have to be farther away, right? Because that's the length that I created to be longer. Don't worry about concentrating on your fingers or knuckles. Pay attention to the hair that you're leaving on the head. If you know this length needs to be longer and this length needs to be shorter, look at the difference in the length, right? This is way shorter, this is way longer. But when it drops, right, this length is going to be closer to the floor, which means my fingers need to be farther away from the head. Right, so now I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Get my sections really clean. Diagonal section. Move that out of the way and clip it nice and clean right against the head. Careful not to combine the two sides together at any point on any haircut. So unless you're taking a section the way you need your right side and the left side to be together, then that's okay. If you cut in your right side and your left side separately, never put them together, especially when you have a triangular cutting line. The reason for it, it goes triangular this way and triangular that way. If you take any of that hair into your left side, you're going to recut your right side. All right, so elevation, a little tiny bit higher. Find your elevation, find your over direction. Over direction directly up from where it grows. Elevation, slightly higher from the previous section. I remembered where and how I held that hair, and I went a little bit higher this time around. So as I'm approaching my ends, I'm looking for that guide, and I'm making sure my knuckles are farther away from the head than my fingertips. So if I don't have to concentrate on my finger angle, I concentrate on how much hair am I leaving and where that hair needs to be longer. I know the length around the perimeter needs to be longer, which means whatever is the part of my body that's touching that area needs to be farther away from the head. Go all the way to the end, and a little tiny trim right here. Now this was my third section. First one was the face frame that I didn't have to worry about recutting. So now I'm going to cross-check this again. You guys remember where I stood when I cross-checked, right? So I stood right here. So Elise, come stand next to me. And do you remember when I cross-checked, that cutting line matched my fingers here? So now with this second haircut, my elevation is much higher. I'm bringing hair closer to here. Now if I bring this out, do you guys see how my fingers are now matching up this cutting line? Which means I brought hair higher, I created more movement in the back in comparison to the front. So if I'm cross-checking, these lengths are very similar, right? When they drop, this length is still going to be a little tiny bit longer than the length in the front. All right, so next section. From here, all the way to the hairline. Comb and clip that out of the way. Now I'm cutting more hair, which means my section's got to be a little bit thinner so that I could see through my sectioning. Now I'm going to subsection, move some of that hair out of the way. This way, I'm only holding 2 sections between my fingers. I'm gonna find my elevation. So for this one, I'm gonna turn halfway. I'm gonna find her face. And this way you guys can see what my elevation is, right? So with each section, I'm gradually moving up. I'm making sure that my elevation is constantly changing. If it doesn't change, that means the length is going to get much longer. So here's my elevation. Here's my over direction. Directly up, and then it's just a little tiny bit to the left. Find my guide. Making sure that the cutting line that I'm creating is triangular. So going from shorter to longer. My elevation is staying the same. Fluid throughout the whole section. And my over direction is exactly from where the hair grows from, directly forward from that point. Between each section, I'm always making sure that I'm combing the hair, combing this out of the way, so I'm always working really clean. Clipping it out of the way. And then the same thing on the opposite side. So this way I have 2 sections between my fingers, and the section is always really clean. Once I'm done with that section, I'm going to comb everything down so the client looks really pretty in the mirror. So I'm going to do the same exact thing on this side. I'm going to spin the opposite direction just so you guys can see the elevation really well. So here's my elevation. And then on this side, I'm going to make sure the elevation is directly up from where hair grows on the head. Continue being fluid throughout the whole entire section, following the guide all the way through. Always comb the hair down, get it really clean, so then when you're ready to take a next section, your new section, you don't have to battle through tangles and frizz. And the cleaner you work and the better the client looks, the more they're going to appreciate, the more professional you're going to look, the more knowledgeable you're going to appear, and the more technical and well executed your haircut is going to be. Okay, so for the last section, I'm going to comb this forward. Again, I'm going to subsection. So at least what I want you to do is I want you to kind of come up a little bit higher. So this is my last section on both sides, which means this is where I finished cutting. So I'm going to go 1 section back, and that's going to make sure that I have just enough of a guide, right? So it's going to be this wide of a section that's already previously cut. So I know I'll have enough of a guide to take this whole entire section between my fingers, and I'll be able to see and follow my guide. All right, so you can come back a little bit. Perfect. Again, I'm going to comb all of this hair directly up, right into my fingers. Comb as many times as you need to really make sure that every grain is really clean. Directly forward or directly up, just a little tiny bit to the left, but only a little bit, because at this point, you really don't need much over direction because we already have a middle parting. Keep going nice and slow. Slow down once you get towards the ends. Here's my guide. Make sure you're seeing your guide clearly. If you don't see your guide, either your new section is too thick and you are cutting way too much hair, or you didn't take enough of the previously cut section between your fingers, which is the reason why I keep one side clipped up so that I know how much hair I'm going to section that I already previously cut. And again, comb it down, nice and clean, and make sure that all that looks good. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the opposite side. I'm gonna resection my previous section, move that hair out of the way, and now I can combine this whole entire section together in my fingers. Before I cut it, I'm gonna make sure that elevation is good, over direction is good. However many times it's going to take to comb all of this hair up, really clean. Sometimes I'll go from the front if it's helpful. As long as your elevation, your over direction stays true and fluid, you're good. So elevation directly up, finger angle matching to my cutting line. Find your guide, here it is. And then extend the line all the way until you run out of hair. Comb this down, make sure it looks clean. And now I'm going to cross check. I'm going to make sure that this whole entire haircut looks really clean. Comb that hair out of the way. Now I can take a horizontal section, bring it at the elevation and over direction. All right, so my over direction was almost up, but not directly. And then elevation for these first couple of sections, that was here. Next section was a little bit higher, was here. And the last couple of sections, they were here. So what I'm looking for is a fluid line where the length in the back is gradually longer and a little bit shorter in the front. The rule of thumb for me is if I cross-check this first section and my cutting line looks pretty clean and pretty good, I don't have to worry about cross-checking the rest of the haircut. I know that if it looks good, most likely I didn't make a mistake anywhere else. I'm going to cross-check just to make sure. Looks pretty good. Now I'm going to cross-check to the opposite side. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to stand on the side. I'm going to elevate directly up. Same elevation, same over direction as the cutting. That's how I was originally cutting. And then all the way, she's shedding a little hair, and then here's my cutting line. And voila. This is how we style doll heads.
Yes.
We flip them upside down. And look how beautiful she looks.
Are people going to be able to, this is recorded, correct?
It is, I'm going to save the whole, yes, I'm going to save everything so you guys can watch it as many times as you want. Rewatch it. There's no charge for rewatching it or replaying it. And then this way, once it is saved, you can pause it, cut the section, come back and watch the new section. Right, so I just want to show you guys the movement. Right, so here's her front pieces right over here. The length in the back is gradually getting longer. And then the shortest pieces in the back is down here, right? So the first haircut, all of these shorter layers were all the way down here. Pretty much she didn't have any movement. So now she's got much, much more movement, right? You could see all that is back here, but it's still very manageable. She still can only blow dry really the front, and then once she pushes it back, she'll have all of that pretty layer going on in the back. All right, so this concludes our second haircut. Again, if you guys need to reach out to me and have any questions at all, you can DM me today. I'll be on my phone all evening. Tomorrow, anytime I'm available for hopefully not more than a couple of weeks. Again, the next class is going to be March 27th, which is this Friday, I'm going to do medium length. So we're gonna do a line technique first. Line technique is quite boring to watch, but I promise it is one of the most crucial haircuts of our career. That's your foundation for the bobs. Any graduations that you ever do, you need to do a line technique that looks really solid, really pretty. So we're gonna be working with somewhere in these lengths in here. And we are also going to be doing graduation. Quickly, I also wanted to show a quick tip on how to do a fringe. I know that was one of the questions earlier. So I have Viola, which is our second wonderful model, also from pivotpoint.com. Pivotpoint International, I believe, is the website.com. And again, as I mentioned before, they are offering 25% off. So if you guys want to get yourself a doll head, Kate is, I think it's like 50 bucks, somewhere around there, with a discount. So worth it. She's got great texture and good hair to work with. All right, so really quickly, I want to show some fringe techniques. We'll be able to do a little bit more fringes once we get into the bobs, because I think it would be really pretty to do a cute bob with a fringe. On the long hair doll head, I can't do a fringe because I want to use that doll head for the second and the third haircut so that you guys can follow it along. Okay, so the rule of thumb when we are doing our fringes, the width of the section will depend on how creative you want this fringe to be. If this is a middle-aged woman, someone who has long hair, and they just want to see a little bit of hair on their faces, when you push that hair forward, you want to work with the arch of the eyebrow, right? So the hair that grows from the arch of the eyebrow is going to be your fringe. So from here to about here. The second thing that we need to discuss is how far back do you go? Again, if someone is very conservative and they really don't want to see too much of that bang, they just want to see a little bit of that softness to kind of cover their forehead, you're going to work with the round of the head. So wherever the comb sits and bevels, that's going to be the bottom of the round of the head. So I'm going to take a section to about here. I'm going to move that hair out of the way. And I'm going to create a low triangle coming from that point right to the arch of the eyebrow. And then curve that out of the way. And the same thing on the opposite side. All right, so here are your conservative bangs. This is the width, arch of the eyebrow, and this is the height, wherever the comb bevels. Now let's say she came back to you guys and she got a new job, she's a little bit more creative now, she wants to live it up a little tiny bit more. So instead of doing the arch of the eyebrow, just where the round of the head is, we're gonna go a little bit higher and a little farther out. So look at the difference between how the thickness, the density, and the height of that section, right? Look how much more coverage you're getting, and look how much more dense this haircut or this fringe is going to be. Now, if you want someone to have a full fringe and a current fringe, what you can do is you can, instead of working with the bevel, the round, the bottom of the round of the head, you can work with the top of the round of the head. So where the comb sits flatter, that's where we're going to take our section, and we're gonna go way, all the way to the outside of the eyebrow. So the beauty of a curtain fringe is that this piece wings out and kicks out, and that's what gives it that fringy effect, right? And a little curtainy, that's a word, curtainy fringe, curtainy effect. So we're gonna do the same thing on the opposite side. Comb goes flat. And then from here, right to the outside of the eyebrow. So the beauty of using the head shape and our features as a guide, if someone doesn't have perfectly symmetric fringe, perfectly symmetric eyebrows, you can fix it. So not only have you become hairdressers, but also plastic surgeon. Right? So that will be my sectioning for a curtain fringe or for a really full fringe. I hope this helps. Okay, so again, thank you guys so much for joining. Thank you for watching. Thank you for donating. I really hope you guys enjoyed this class. Please send me a DM. Tell me how you felt about it. I'm sorry about the chat. I'm going to try to figure out for the next class, maybe do a test run at home and figure out how we get this chat working so that it's a little bit easier for Elise to ask or to read questions, and then much easier for you guys to ask as well. Again, hopefully I'll see you guys on Friday for our second class. I will be sending emails out to everyone who weren't able to join to really make sure that you guys are aware that the second class is happening so that you don't miss out on the opportunity. And again, thank you guys so much. I will be saving this, so please rewatch it as many times as you like. Thank you.
I don't stop it.
Okay, hopefully I